Let's turn our attention to college football, where there is a change to Brandon Marcello's power rankings. Miami leapfrogging the Big Ten schools and Georgia to climb up to number 1 after the blowout win over South Florida. Bulls were the biggest risers last week. They fall to 25 after that loss at Hard Rock Stadium. I'm Tommy Tran, back here for our weekly chat with Brandon Marcello and Danny Kanell. Again, Brandon's list. Danny gets to give some reaction, some agreement, some disagreement, whatever comes to DK's mind. But Brandon, first and foremost, we have to talk about the number 1 team in your power rankings. How did we arrive with the Canes?
They've been the most impressive team offensively and defensively 3 weeks into the season. They've knocked off 2 ranked opponents and have done so by pulling out a win against Notre Dame in some serious, tough situations. They did so by also relying on a defense that's really stepped up and changed quite a bit from last year. And then this past week, they blew out a USF team that has been very good. Obviously beat Florida, but if you watch and look at their analytics, they've been very, very good defensively, in addition to what they're doing offensively with Byron Brown there at quarterback for USF. So Miami is able to leapfrog everybody else ahead of them right now, partially also because Ohio State's win against Texas doesn't look as impressive right now, with Texas struggling as well analytically when you look at their offense and some of their defensive numbers, but especially offensively. Georgia jumping up a little bit because of their win at Tennessee, but some big issues to really look at with their defense after that win. But for right now, Miami deserves that number 1 spot because they've been the most explosive offense and they've had the most dominant defense in all of college football against some tough opponents.
I love it. I totally agree with you on the Canes. Resume and eye test, however you want to describe it. You know, Corey Heatherton comes in there, takes over that defense, and he has paid off dividends. The big defensive coordinator hire they got from Minnesota. Ruben Bain is starting to deliver on some of the promise. Akeem Mesidor, a couple edge rushers for them. They've looked as dominant as it gets. And then I've been really impressed with Carson Beck. I had my doubts, and I know statistically he's putting up great numbers. He leads the country in completion percentage. He's completing 79% of his passes. But what I saw on Saturday against South Florida, in a game that could have been tricky because of the weather delay, they'd have to come back in. You could come out flat. I saw a fiery Carson Beck getting after his teammates, firing them up, pumping them up out there. That was something I didn't know, if he could be that emotional leader. And so far, through 3 games, he's stepped up. Agree with you, man. Miami's got the best resume. They look the part.
They've got Florida. They've got Florida State on the horizon. And to your guys' point, look, I know Carson Beck gets a lot of the headlines, the Heisman chat, but the improvement on defense, I think, is big because that was a big bugaboo for them last year, not getting to where they wanted to be. Let's get to Georgia Tech, which enters the chat here, Brandon. It was easily the best game of the noon slate, that big win over Clemson at the death, fire drill, Toro drill. Danny and I were talking about it in studio here. What stood out to you about the Yellow Jackets, and did you even consider placing them even higher than you did?
I did, but also I've noticed that we've been noticing for the last couple of weeks that Clemson is just not as good as we thought they were going to be, right? And you look at the analytics of everything, their offense has especially been struggling. So Georgia Tech in a situation here, I think they're put about the right spot when you look at the power rankings here. Here's the other thing. What a job the Georgia Tech staff has done there. Since they've taken over in 2022, they're 16-6 as the underdogs. We need to stop considering them underdogs, I guess, to see if they might lose some games. But they got the potential here, when you look at that schedule, to make quite the run and maybe get in that ACC championship game. Quite remarkable what they're able to do, and what a gamer Haynes King is at quarterback, not only doing it through the air, but mostly on the ground. He just carries his team into the end zone week after week. We've seen it the last 2 years. This is a really darn good Georgia Tech team with the potential to rise and maybe challenge Miami and Florida State to get in that ACC championship game.
I don't know, you guys, I'm sure you were super dialed into the Cover 3 podcast live this morning, but I gave them this. I gave them that right there.
Ooh.
That is their college football playoff ticket. It is punched for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets because their schedule is one of the more favorable schedules in the ACC and in the entire country. They will be favored from here on out until they play Georgia in Atlanta there, that last game of the season. I love this team. I would have had them personally above Texas. I think you're a little bit too high on Texas from what we've seen from them. But they are a team that has put everyone on notice in the country. And I talked to Brent Key this morning, And he told me, and I think it's a bold statement, and he's backing his quarterback, but he said he doesn't think there's another player in the country who carries a team the way that Haynes King does, both emotionally but production-wise. He's already had 2 games over 100-yard rushing. He throws it just enough, gets it done through the pass game, and he looks like somebody that should be getting mentioned for at least some Heisman. He's still 45-1 odds if they are able to take care of business. And I know statistically he has a long way to go as far as passing the football, but if he stays healthy, this Georgia Tech team is going to be in the college football playoff.
Danny, like Willy Wonka, giving out the golden ticket to Charlie out there. He's going to be pretty happy to be able to get into the dance. And again, what a moment, especially with Key and King there at the end. That was something tough that made the social media rounds. We continue the conversation, Brandon. Notre Dame, they have a favorable schedule, but not a lot of ranked teams to help their cause down the way. How disappointing was that loss in the ending here, and you still kept them in your top 25?
You know, it's interesting. I always trust Marcus Freeman late in games, but late in games are 0-2 this season against Miami and Texas A&M, and the defense has really been disappointing this year. We knew that this defense was not going to be as great as it was last year under Al Golden when he left, but it's been downright atrocious at times, especially against Texas A&M. But, man, they faced maybe two of the best offenses in the country at Miami on the road in the season opener and against Texas A&M, where quarterback Marcel Reed has really added another dimension to his game as a passer, being able to extend plays, and it's just been a big-time gamer for them. Texas A&M, by the way, picking up their first ranked road win since 2014. But I still have Notre Dame ranked because if you look at the numbers, the analytics, this is still a pretty darn good team, a top 25 team. And I think the schedule will prove that as they go through the season. They're going to win and win and win week after week. I just think that they just hit a buzzsaw with a Texas A&M program that is revitalized, has got that offense going, and a Miami team that, again, is number 1 in my rankings with a bullet.
Numbers, analytics, metrics. Get them out of the paint. Get them out of there. I get it. I can hear you say, well, if Ty Buckner catches that extra point, puts it down, maybe they go to overtime, maybe they actually get the win. But at some point, the most important number is the final scoreboard. And do you get that W or not? I don't have a huge problem with it because I get it. You can defend your case, and I think it makes a ton of sense. I would just wait and say, you know what? Let's see Notre Dame win a game or 3 or 4 in a row before we put them back in there. This is going to be very interesting because I do think there's a great chance that they do what they did last year and they could win 10 straight games. And that debate could get very interesting because they do not have any resume builders. They better be rooting for Boise. Arkansas just lost Ole Miss, so good luck with that. USC, I think, is probably their best chance to have a very, a team in the top 25 when they play them. But I think this is going to be a really, really interesting debate with them. If they're 10-2, and then people will start to say, well, those losses were really close, and they scheduled those tough games, but they still lost them. That debate, I think, is one we can anticipate come November.
And let's end with
Danny. I think I want to say real quick. With that said, I think a 3-loss SEC team is going to end up getting over a 10-2 Notre Dame team. The way it's stacking up, I think that's what we're leading to here if Notre Dame does that. I
don't think you would get any pushback from a ton of people outside of those vested interests there. All right, and then we picked up on the Trojans there. We saw on the schedule. They're in the top 25, but not in Brandon Marcello's top 25. I'm actually going to flip the script because I know Danny and I have had conversations about the Trojans here. Danny, should the Trojans be in Brandon's top 25, and what question do you have for Marcello?
I would say I would have them in. I probably would replace them with Notre Dame. I think that'd be a good option to do that because they have started off undefeated. I love this team. I was a little bit disappointed in him, Thomas. I didn't think they didn't get me the cover at the end of the game. And
who called the delay?
Touchdown.
That's the delay reason for that. That's my reason, by the way.
Oh, totally. The delay had them off to a slow start. I think defensively, they're strongest. They're probably the strongest they've been with Lincoln Riley. They brought in the new strength coach. Dan Lynn was there last year, but you're finally starting to see a little bit more physicality up front. And so Lincoln Riley may have found his guy in Jaden Maeva, who is playing great so far this season. He can sling it. He's got some weapons to work with. So I had USC as the dark horse team from the Big Ten to get into the playoff, not winning the Big Ten, but I think they're going to continue to make strides forward. So I'm projecting a little bit. You can't really defend their resume that much because how impressive is a win against Purdue on the road, not to stack up with some of these other teams. But I'm a believer in USC.
Yeah, it was just too close of a score against Purdue, and then also the schedule just hasn't been there. Georgia Southern, Missouri State, both at home, not impressive, but man, goodness gracious, they're leading the Big Ten in offense. They're averaging over 600 yards per game. They're going to get into the meat of the schedule now. They got every opportunity to challenge in the Big Ten, as Danny said. I really like what they're doing offensively. I think they finally have a quarterback situation they feel comfortable with for the first time in 2 years. Defensively, I still think they're working out some kinks, especially on the back end, but the talent is there. This USC team is going to probably creep up on some folks. They might be in the mix in November to get to Indianapolis.
Okay, Brandon's still cautious. Danny and I still reeling off of our 20.5 to 21.5 lane with the Trojans at Purdue. Guys, certainly appreciate it. Another great conversation this week. A reminder about the Cover 3 with DK, Chip, Tom, and Bud. Check out the podcast. Danny handing out CFP tickets, locks on Thursday, instant reaction on Saturdays. They've got you covered.